A lot of people are finding themselves scrambling to pay increased power bills.
Electricity bills.
The electric bill.
Across the country, as people open their electricity bills, gas.
The electric bill would get over $1,000.
And bills could skyrocket even more.
But, we need the electricity.
Why are power bills so high right now? One of the biggest reasons is our dependence on fossil fuels, specifically gas, to generate electricity.
Electric bills may go up by more than 60%. The reason? Higher natural gas prices.
We have alternatives that are cheaper, more stable, and that don't emit climate pollution. But electric utilities or power companies have resisted efforts to transition to clean energy.
That was a moment from a documentary I'll tell you more about later in this segment. But I want to discuss something a little bit different than the normal day-to-day goings-on of American politics. Super important though, so stick around for it. So we'll get to an illustration of what we're up against in the fight to act on climate change. But first, let me lay out the context for why this is on my mind. So one of the historic pieces of legislation that has been implemented in the last few years that we've talked a lot about is the Inflation Reduction Act. And so much is a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, but I noticed myself putting emphasis mostly on the lowering of prescription drug costs, sometimes ACA expansions, but often quickly skip over the fact, or just touch on it briefly, that it makes the largest investment in green energy in history. And I guess I do that because I'm serving an argument that I think some conservatives will be most compelled by, so I'm focusing on those things, but I shouldn't skip over that huge achievement, especially given that proper investments in green energy are such a smart decision for us as a country, of course, for the livability of our planet. My goodness. And also given that clean energy is cheaper to produce than fossil fuels. So liberals and conservatives alike, regardless of your ideology, we should all be pumped up by that, right? And I'm showing some examples on screen of studies that have been done on this. And that somehow gets lost so often in the conversation. We could be saving money, but we're choosing not to. And there really is a future, if we would manifest it, where we do this correctly and benefit in so many ways, even very selfishly. If we're on the forefront of green energy and have thriving industries within that context, we'll be able to gain jobs, lower energy costs, and do so while keeping the planet livable. Win, 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 baby. Now, you would think that just the motivation to have drinkable water, breathable air, healthy ecosystems to produce food, etc., would be enough to make these changes, but clearly it's not, because we're not making them fast enough. And so I do think we should also call attention to the way that people will win financially, saving money if we make these investments. And that was a big goal of the IRA, stated, was to lower energy costs for Americans while making these crucial clean energy investments. And there's a lot of work to be done, of course, to get us where we need to be as a country, but that's why it's so important to be doing it right now. If we as a country lead on this issue, that means, again, the thriving industries are in the United States producing this energy, millions of jobs being created, people are experiencing cheaper electric bills, and we're making sure we have a livable planet. But the question has to be asked, right? Well, then why don't people really grasp that? Why aren't people aware that fighting against proper action on climate change is fighting against their own cost savings if we implement this correctly? Well, there's a whole lot of people, the answer is, who don't love the idea of that becoming common knowledge. And so a lot of misinformation on this issue is pumped out, and people get confused, understandably. For a long time, we were lied to about the existence of climate change. And I guess still that's sort of happening, but the mainstream has started to understand the science. And now those same people who were lying about that are lying about the cost of clean energy. And I'm sure you can guess one of the industries doing that, fossil fuel companies, obviously, but also power companies. What? And on that, I want to request you all watch something that I'll link below in the description. It's a short mini documentary on YouTube. And I know the creators, it's an organization called Evergreen. You saw some of it in the intro. I'll play a little bit more in a moment, but it nicely illustrates how important it is that we stay vigilant on this issue, given the constant effort by massive corporations to prevent change on it. And this documentary specifically focuses on, again, power companies. They're quite literally using the money we spend on our energy to lobby a message against a green energy transition while often promoting misinformation about the subject and about the cost. They're working really hard to prevent necessary change, so we have to work harder in the other direction. And here's a bit of this documentary that I found really informative and impactful.
And that lobbying is a big part of the problem. Take a look at this letter. It comes from an electric utility front group called the Edison Electric Institute. In the letter, EEI is asking the Environmental Protection Agency to weaken an important climate rule. Most people in the United States get their electricity from a member of the group that wrote this letter. Fees tacked onto their power bills paid for the lobbyists and the lawyers who wrote it. And that's a big problem, because you need electricity and you don't get a choice in who you buy it from. Electric utilities have monopolies. And those utilities spend tens of millions of dollars a year on lobbyists who are opposing clean energy. But at the same time, utilities are also spending your money on fancy ad campaigns to greenwash their image.
Together, we're building our clean energy future.
Utilities are playing a game. They're saying one thing to the public and something completely different behind closed doors with regulators.
So go watch the full thing. Again, it's linked in the description below. A lot of necessary and important information there. The Inflation Reduction Act really was a good step in the right direction, but we need leaders who are willing to fight hard against the consistent and influential effort to prevent proper change from happening and make those next steps happen.